Hi everyone, welcome back to the Stuttgart Arena. It is not the post-match debrief us or anyone else in Scotland wanted to do. Hungary 1, Scotland 0. It means Scotland are definitely heading home from Euro 2024. Had that game ended 0-0, there was a slim possibility that Scotland might have still been able to make it through. As it turned out, Hungary scored a winner deep into injury time, probably 98 minutes gone, that ensured that their chances remain alive. Scotland were poor, never really showed up. That's quite a cliche, but pretty true. I think their expected goals after 90 minutes was about 0.05. They'd only had 2 shots in that time. Managed to build a bit of momentum late on, but all very much a case of too late. And the wait for a team to make it out of the group stage goes on. Jonny, I'm sure your take on the game won't be that dissimilar to me, but the immediate feeling is, as good as this team has been in moments, you can't help but sense that it's missed opportunity.
Of course, it's a massive missed opportunity. You cannot go through to the knockout stages of major tournaments if you don't have any attacking threat. And simply put, Scotland are a joke in forward areas. It's embarrassing. 0.76 XG against Switzerland, 0.01 against Germany, and at 90 minutes tonight, 0.03. So they wouldn't be expected to create a single goal across 90 minutes against these teams. Now, there was 10 minutes of added time, and Scotland added another 0.1 XG in that period as they tried to get forward, and the game became a basketball match. They lost complete control of the game. It was just a case of, let's flip a coin in the air and try and get something. But it wasn't good enough. Let's not be around the bush tonight. Absolutely not good enough. Major questions for Steve Clarke. It's obviously emotional in the moment, Josh, but you start to question whether or not he's the right man to take this team forward. He's achieved 2 championship qualifications. You can't take that away from him, but that's twice now we've been humbled and humiliated at major tournaments by nations that I think we should be getting a little bit closer to than we have been. Hungary in particular, you know, they're a nation that Scotland should be not be dominated like they were at stages in that game. Well, listen, first half, Hungary were in control of that game because they had control of the football Scotland, but in areas that Hungary was happy with. You know, knocking it back and forward between the centre-backs, between Gilmour and McGregor, without any penetration. Hungary were looking to try and hit on the counter-attack, and when the opportunity came to hit them on the counter-attack, the game plan opened up for them. And they had several chances. You know, they hit the post, a couple of good saves from Angus Gunn, who I thought was probably Scotland's best player in the end. And, you know, unfortunately, that means that Scotland's tournament's over. But you know what, Josh? It's exactly what Scotland deserve. They've got what they deserve. This was an abject display across 3 games overall. And you have to say that they didn't deserve anything tonight. So you can't stand up and be counted at this point of a tournament, then it's better that you don't go through because humiliation awaits.
Yeah, I thought it was... after the kind of refreshing performance against Switzerland, it was a bit of a step backwards, and a lot of that had to do with the fact that I think Hungary knew where Scotland were weakest, which is often when they have the ball trying to break down the defence. We know Scotland didn't have the space when they had the ball because Hungary weren't really pressing them to try and play into. They couldn't inject tempo into the game like against Switzerland because they didn't have much of the ball at Hungary. I think Scotland had 75% of possession after about half an hour. The full-time stats, Scotland had 4 shots to Hungary's 14, no big chances, no shots on target, I don't think, or 1 shot on target from Grant Hanley. Hungary's 1.02 expected goals to Scotland, 0.13. And I guess that is the story that, listen, that there's a wider conversation to be had about Scotland in major tournaments and where it has went wrong. But ultimately, as you're kind of touching upon there, Jonny, while if Scotland had drawn 0-0 tonight and it had still been 2 points, although unlikely, they could have still gone through. But I thought it was a perfect demonstration of that, I'll call it glorious failure, but there's nothing glorious about that, of that late concession that if Scotland wanted to write history, they had to do it. They had to take it into their own hands. They weren't able to do that, and then it was taken away from them tonight, wasn't it?
It was. Listen, I wouldn't criticise Steve Clarke for going a bit gung-ho in the last 10 minutes because it was a bit late, but he had to do that. He had to turn it into a basketball match because there wasn't a way to do it with structure. He tried to do it with structure and it didn't work. I mean, for me, 2 points was never going to be enough. So honestly, I think it was right to throw caution in the wind and pour forward. I don't even think Hungary will get through. Now, I might be proven wrong with that. I really don't think they'll get through the way the groups are panning out. but people need to look beyond the final back and forth, and people might look to Grant Hanley's shot. It was well saved by the keeper, but he should have saved it. You need to look at the overall game and what Scotland offered, and they just didn't offer enough. We have some good players, McTominay, McGinn, Gilmore, Robertson, but we don't play in a way that makes you think that's a cohesive, well-coached team. Certainly not at this tournament. We saw that in qualifying. We were just looking a little bit all over the place. And listen, Josh, we identified it before the tournament. We talked about it before the tournament. We have no threat down the right-hand side. So if teams block us off down the left, we end up playing the game in about 60% of the pitch. And you saw that tonight with Ralston. I don't want to be going too-footed on Ralston too much because he's trying his best. But the fact is, a lot of the players in the team looked like they weren't comfortable, and there was opportunities to pass the ball to Ralston when he was in space, and they chose not to. And you're thinking to yourself, well, surely the manager can see that James Forrest would give us something more out there, and he didn't. He chose not to make that change. I find that inexplicable. Lewis Morgan, for me, even when he came on, I thought added some serious threat down that flank. Now, I don't know if Lewis Morgan could play wing back. That might be a big ask. James Forrest, we know, and we've seen in the past, he can be diligent in defensive situations. But you know what? Could it be that much worse than it is now? Could it have been much worse than it's been? I don't think so. So I think you have to be able to look back with hindsight and say, well, maybe we'd have been better starting more attacking players in the flanks.
Yeah, I guess it's not a game where, as a neutral, just looking at the numbers alone, you think that, yes, Scotland had a few late moments. They had, obviously, the penalty shout where I don't know if Armstrong was looking for it or he was taken down. They were sent through in that moment. There was a couple of cutbacks, a couple of crosses. But it's not a performance where there was much to hold on to. And listen, I think, to your point, injuries, when you're a nation as small as Scotland and you have your first choice player out and your second choice player out in a position like the right wing back position, when you're playing quite a specific system, when you're missing Tierney tonight, we know Dykes would have played a big role at this tournament. That does have to be taken into consideration. But I guess, again, that persistent feeling will be much like that Croatia game a few years ago when Scotland had the opportunity to chase it. They were up against a much better opponent last time against Croatia. Especially here, it was Hungary who looked most likely. They hit the post just before 90 minutes. Soberschlei tested Angus Gunn at the front post. And I guess, Jonny, that, listen, the wait, obviously, we'll speak about this more in podcast in the day to come. The wait for that team to finally break this duck goes on. I guess the legacy of this team will be determined by a bit of time. They're not, this group in this tournament are not going to be the ones who break it. And I guess there is that question now that there hasn't been progression from the last major tournament to this. There hasn't qualification, and that's important to point out. But again, just reflecting on it now, you cannot get away from the sense that this is a missed opportunity because Hungary had some quality. But in terms of having a winnable game in the final game of a group stage, you're not going to get much better than tonight, are you?
No, absolutely. We said that before the game. This is an opportunity against a weaker opponent that you would normally get in this final game. You think back to previous tournaments, and Scotland have been up against the likes of Holland in the last game, the likes of Brazil. You can even Croatia, who were a recent World Cup finalist at that point. It's very, very difficult to get into this stage, and it's even more difficult to have a chance going into that last game. So to go against a team like this, you've got to expect more. I don't even expect Scotland to win or necessarily demand that Scotland win. But you want to at least go down punching, Josh. And the truth is, that game, it was Steve Clarke at his worst, hesitant, trying to touch and feel his way through a game. But it should have been balls to the wall. This is a game that needs to be grabbed by the scruff of the neck and wrestled into shape, and we just didn't ever look likely to do that, and that's something that I think will haunt this group of players because they'll know the level of opportunity they've had here. But for me, the major thing is the manager. I don't want to go too hard on the players because I just think Scotland have better players than 0.03 XG up to 90 minutes. 0.01 XG against Germany, 0.76 XG against Switzerland, although I thought they were pretty good in that game. There's just no attacking cohesion if it's not a counter-attack. And that's on the manager. The manager has to have a plan B where he can say, right, I need to go... Scotland, for me, were crying out in this game to go 3 at the back, Gilmore and McGregor in midfield, McTominay or McGinn in front, and then 2 strikers with Robertson on one side and Griffith and Forrest on the other. Griffiths would be a surprise. I keep doing that. I don't know why. It must be all the beer in Germany or something like that. But I was crying out for that really positive front foot, aggressive. We're going after this game. We're taking it to them. But Clark, he's just always going to be that guy that's like, oh, you know, we'll see where we are after 65 minutes. And that's fine if you're successful. But the minute it doesn't work, then it looks terrible. And that's what we're looking at tonight. We're looking at a manager that he doesn't have that killer instinct because he's trying to feel his way all the time tactically through. And listen, Steve Clark's a good manager and he's been a good Scotland manager overall. That's twice now in major tournaments he's come short. And he's certainly not learned from the last tournament to this one, or he's not tangibly shown he's learned, because this actual section was worse. The performances here were worse than Scotland were at Euro 2021. And I don't think that's deniable. Abject against Germany, abject tonight, and then the Switzerland game was passable.
Okay, right, we'll leave it there. We will be live probably at some point tomorrow as we try to dissect that with a little bit more distance. But, of course, the headline, as you will already know, Scotland's way to make it out of a major tournament group stage goes on after a 1-0 defeat to Hungary. Thank you for joining us. Enjoy the rest of your night if you can. I'm sure you won't be able to, and we'll speak to you again soon. Thanks for watching. Bye for now.